A nation of renters. The Great Reset's goal of creating a nation of renters is on full display in the data. As Klaus Schwab said, the world will become more angry. You will own nothing and be happy. So, nowhere to go. How record high rent hikes have cornered renters. Yes, there's been some curtailment in markets, but the rents are up big time. The rent hikes are beginning to create another shift in the housing market in terms of where people are choosing to live. You know, a different movement from when people fled major, cities hit hardest by COVID-19 in 2020, preferring larger, suburban areas, bigger yards, safety, or even moving back in with family members. Households now renting in the U.S. at highest levels in over half a century. That's where we stand. So for people with rental properties, it's been great. Other people hasn't been so great because people weren't paying during COVID. So the past 2.5 years have been the most tumultuous time for the rental market in recent memory. Much of the craziness can be traced back to the way that the pandemic has changed the ways that we live and work. In the earliest phases of the pandemic, many of the nation's large cities saw sharp rent declines as a subset of renters with newly remote working arrangements moved away from expensive downtown areas that had temporarily lost their, vibrancy in search of more space in the surrounding suburbs and safety. And at the same time, widespread job losses also forced many workers to give up leases they could no longer afford. In times since, big city rent prices have bounced back as employment has rebounded and a return to work plans have begun to materialize. I always said, city centers will always be there. There might be some type of hybrid, but it's not going to go away when that panic was going on. But it's still the suburbs that have continued to see the fastest rent growth. Heightened demand for suburban rentals could continue as an ongoing trend, in my opinion, particularly as a sizable share of the workforce maintains some level of remote work flexibility right now, even though people are returning. I do think that's a good thing. Then you look at the large millennial population, continues to age into their settling down phase as well. So in 2020, the pace of household formation, a group of people living together, dropped for the first time in decades. There were roughly 128.5 million new household formations in 2020, down a mere 128,000. But it marked the first decline in a given year since 1984, according to the Census Bureau data. And those rental prices have gone up in nearly every city, regardless of whether, it was a major metro area or more suburban. So according to Rent Cafe, soaring U.S. home prices made many, people put the dream of home ownership behind them, with roughly 43.7 million households now renting, the highest level in 55 years. Apartment living has become, popular even in neighborhoods that were once considered owner hotspots. So you see the shift. Corporations coming in, buying up a lot of property. RC reports the number of renters in the United States rose by 12% between 2011 and 2020, 3 times faster than the 4% increase in homeowners, according to the most recent U.S. Census estimates. So it's no surprise, that during this time period, as many as 101 zip codes switched from owner to renter. 101 zip codes switched from owner to renter majority. With the addition of these communities, renters surpass owners in 41%, or 632 of the 1553 zip codes analyzed in the 50 largest cities. So leading the list of zips that made the switch to renter majority, Columbus, 43,420, boost a whopping 157% increase of renters in the last 10 years. As a result, 67% of this zip code's residents are renters. By comparison, 37% of residents were renting here in 2011. Incredible. On a city level, Philadelphia is home to the largest number of zip codes turned renter havens among all other cities analyzed. Renters outnumbered homeowners in 7 neighborhoods throughout the city. Memphis, Tennessee, and Houston, Texas follow closely behind with 6 zip codes each. So, what's more, the past decade was a true renaissance period for downtown renters. Many of the zip codes with the fastest growing renter populations are located in city cores. So specifically, 8 of the 20 neighborhoods that saw their renter populations increase by more than 80% in the past decade are in or near downtowns. So in this respect, zip code 78215 in downtown San Antonio, Texas boasts the largest growth in the nation, a staggering 238% increase. Year over year, state increases with nearly 90% of markets up year over year. The largest increase are spread across the country. When you look at from Florida to New Jersey to Delaware, New Mexico, Washington, Rhode Island, rents are up by more than 15%. In total, 22 states saw a year-over-year increase above the national median. So among those, 17 states saw a rent increase of more than 10%, and 4 states registered rent growth greater than 20%. So take a look at this. Put this out for you. Florida, 25.5%. Delaware, 23.9%. New Mexico, 21.2%. Oklahoma, 20.8%. New Hampshire, 19.1%. Washington, plus 18.4%. Kentucky, plus 18.3%. Utah, 16.7%. Rhode Island, 16.5%. New Jersey coming in at 15.5%. Incredible. And there's been some decreases out there. Year-over-year decreases. Only 5 states saw rent declines in September year-over-year. Minnesota saw a decline of 0.9% state-level decrease driven by minus 8.8% decrease in the Minneapolis metro. Wisconsin rents dropped more than 7% following a more than 14% drop in Milwaukee metro area rents. New York also saw state-level declines despite more than 15% growth in the New York City metro area. It's a crazy area to rent in. I've heard a lot of interesting stories from friends. So New York is down minus 10%. Wisconsin is minus 7.4%. Minnesota is coming at minus 0.9%. Massachusetts, 0.6%. And Oregon is 0.1%. So as of 2020, renters are the majority in 632 zip codes across the U.S. In fact, the 5 U.S. zip codes located in New York, Nashville, San Francisco, Dallas, Fort Worth, the population is exclusively made up of renters. Los Angeles, California, City of Angels, is the city that boasts the most zip codes, 46, where renters represent the majority of the population. Followed closely by New York City with 44 zip codes. On the other end of the spectrum, the cities with the least renter-dominated zip codes are Colorado Springs, Colorado, Mesa, Arizona, with only 2 and 3 zip codes, respectively. So that's very interesting. So, it's been an interesting 2.5 years. The 2.5 years has, ushered in rapid changes to the way that we live and work, driving, significant shakeups to the housing market. One such disruption has been a spike in the demand for suburban rentals. Even as large core cities have rebounded strongly from the early pandemic declines, rent growth has continued to be, fastest in the suburbs. Even before the pandemic, increasingly unaffordable housing costs close to the urban core areas has been pushing more and more renters to the far peripherals of the nation's large metro areas, resulting in a kind of a proliferation of super commuters. City living has proven resilient and will surely retain its appeal going forward. I've always said that there'll be some type of hybrid, but the city centers aren't going away. But with a meaningful share of the workforce poised to maintain at least partial remote work flexibility going forward, the far-flung suburbs of large metros may continue to experience elevated housing demand going forward. The city centers are important. People wanted to get away. They wanted some freedom. They left blue states, went to some red states, what have you. A lot of New Yorkers went down to Florida, rented. A lot of them returned to New York, talking to friends. So there'll be some type of hybrid, but it's just when you look at the zip codes, and it's crazy, and especially select cities like LA, New York, the zip codes and how things are turning. These are things we follow. Where are the hotspots for renters? Where are the turns happening? Where are people moving from the suburbs? Are they going to stay in the suburbs? Are they going to go back to the city centers? Which city centers took the hardest hit? This is important when you're looking for investment property. It's something I follow, and I love to follow this stuff. It can be a little bit dry. But this pandemic has created a lot of opportunities and also destroyed a lot of businesses, unwarranted, in my opinion. So it's interesting times to be alive. Make sure next week, it's the one right you have that's sacred, that you get out and vote and let your voice be heard. If you're happy with the policies, if you're unhappy with the policies, it doesn't matter, what you think. Free and fair elections are important, and your vote makes a difference. Get out there and vote. Pull that lever. Don't mail it in. Go out there and vote. Pull that lever and make a difference for what you believe in. Because it's very important right now what's going on for the future of our country. And we are the freest country in the world. If you haven't lived all over the world, you don't know how lucky you are. I have. And we want to try to keep it that way. Take care.